Alright, so a couple weeks ago on my Discord, I put an interesting comment in our Hot Takes channel. I decided to jokingly say Spider-Man PS4 is overrated. Of course, I was joking, but there was some truth to my hot take. But let me explain first before you get mad at me. I had just finished the game in Let's Play form on my channel, and the amount of collectibles left a bad taste in my mouth. But the biggest reason I have for calling the game overrated was because I played Miles Morales prior to this one. Playing games out of order, especially ones that are extremely similar to each other, can create a very outlying opinion compared to the mass public of players. One other example I can think of is how I think Fallout 4 is the best Fallout game. Granted, I never played any of the other games, so that's just where my opinion sits at the moment. However, with Spider-Man 2 coming out soon, or it may even be out at the time of this video releasing, I wanted to replay Miles Morales and give my honest opinion and ranking of both Spider-Man PS4 and Miles Morales. If you're new to the channel, I make review and retrospective videos. I also stream from time to time on my Twitch, so be on the lookout for that. Anyways, let's get right into the video and I hope you all enjoy it. So this video is going to be split up into several parts. First, I will briefly discuss my experience with both games. That will involve when I played the games and how I played each of them. Then the rest of the video will be comparing and contrasting the two games in several parts. Those parts include gameplay, characters, story, and a big part of the two games, collectibles and side missions. I'm not going to talk about graphics or kind of art style today, just because I think we can all agree it's very good. These games are some of the best looking games that have come out in the past couple years, so I'm just going to completely ignore it and give them both 10s. But jumping right into my experience with the two games, first off, we're going to talk about Spider-Man. I played this game recently through my YouTube Let's Play on the PS5, but with YouTube Let's Plays, the feeling of being rushed can happen quite a bit. I had the same experience with Red Dead 2. You just want to get right in the main story without any side thing getting in the way, and honestly it can hinder your experience a lot. These Let's Plays, at least personally, can definitely hinder the experience of being immersed into the designed world, so it was definitely a different experience from when I played Miles Morales. But I'm going to try my best to not let it get in the way of my opinion. But for Miles Morales, this was the first game I played on my PS5 when it came out. I think we all can remember the first game we play on a console that we get. For me on PS4, it was Arkham Knight when that came out. And honestly, I think I might have a little bit of bias because of that, but I'm going to try and leave it out within this video. I remember playing and beating the entire game within a weekend on my own time. Granted, that's not much to say because the game is kind of short, but compared to the Let's Play for the other game, it was definitely more relaxing. Even after recently replaying the game on my own time, I felt that same feeling from when I first played it. It's safe to say that these two experiences are quite different, but it won't affect the review of both like I said earlier. I just wanted to discuss some background information prior to jumping into comparing the two. But now let's go into gameplay. And starting off with Spider-Man. And I know they're both technically Spider-Man, but one game is called just Spider-Man and the other one's Miles Morales. I think I'm just going to keep saying it like that to make it easier for everyone to know what I'm talking about, but the best words to describe this game's gameplay is expansive and creativity. There are many different ways to enter combat in Spider-Man, and oh boy do you need it. With the game being all about combat, Spider-Man's gadgets do not disappoint. This is probably the one game where all the gadgets could and should be used in every fight. For me, my personal favorite would have to be the web bomb combined with the concussive blast. And the fact that the gadgets can create combos and bounce off of each other speaks to the many ways the game could be played, and just how creative the devs were when they created these gadgets. Like, they probably thought, hey, how can we make gadgets that can combine with other ones to make these crazy move sets that you can just combine all these different spider abilities. But yeah, I personally think they nailed the gadgets in this game, and then of course the suit powers were really good too. Although they are really fun to try out, the Web Blossom is the obvious best choice for every scenario. That thing is OP, but it is fun to play around with the other ones from time to time. But with moving around the map, this game did it extremely well, and arguably it's more fun than the Arkham games and more fluid as well. With the Batman Arkham games, flying around as Batman was very fun and fluid, but Spider-Man also did a great job with it, and honestly, it might even be better. It's definitely a hard thing to pull off to be better than the Arkham games, so they should be really proud of that one. But one aspect I really do enjoy was sneaking around as Miles Morales and Mary Jane from time to time in the games. Especially during that Rhino scene with Miles, I thought that was really cool and really nerve-wracking. It was a really good part in the game that I thoroughly enjoyed. With the boss fights, I thought they were pretty good. I think the standout ones are the Doc Ock one at the end and the Mr. Negative one as well. I think you can even say the Fisk one from the beginning was a great introduction to fighting in the game. But overall, I would even go as far to say that there is no issue with gameplay in this game, except for the annoyingly dumb machine gun guys in the DLC. And no, I will not be talking about the DLC today because the DLC, I'm going to be completely honest, is horrible in this game. But I will not let that affect the review because it is DLC. Now, with gameplay and Miles Morales, it's honestly kind of weird, but the game definitely lacks in the department of gadgets and suit powers. But for some reason, it makes sense and feels refreshing to me. It was nice to not spam gadgets at enemies and just fight with Miles's electricity powers, which I for one love, and it's one of my favorite things about Miles. But with both games, I feel like the amount of gadgets in both of them makes complete sense. Even so, Miles's electric powers can even mimic some of Peter Parker's gadgets. One example could be the suspension matrix. Oh, and of course his invisibility, which is insanely cool and makes silent missions even more fun. A little OP at times, but I think that kind of adds to the fun of the game personally. But with Miles not having a lot of tech, it honestly makes sense because he kind of just got the superhero gig. He's not on the level of Peter Parker yet, I would say, so to me, it makes sense. But also with moving around the map, Miles can do this extremely well, and honestly, they somehow built onto what made Spider-Man such a good game. Combining the electricity powers and what they had in the prior game, it made moving around the map even more fun. Another gameplay aspect that is extremely good was the boss fights with the Tinkerer. I think this is a standout boss fight in gaming in general. Like, I'm sorry, but this is one of the best boss fights I've fought in. Like, you literally had to use every move that Miles had, and it was actually kind of difficult at certain points. But the main thing that made the boss fight so good was how the cutscenes were perfectly blended with the combat. Everything just flowed so seamlessly, and everything just felt good, man. It felt like a movie. It flowed really well, like I said. It felt good, man. I don't know what else to say. But one thing that I want to add to this whole discussion before we get into the characters, I just want to talk about the setting that took place in both games. This first Spider-Man game took place around Halloween, which I thought was really cool. And with Miles Morales, I thought they did a great job with adding Christmas to everything, but not having it take over the whole game. With both games, they had both of these holidays, but they didn't take over the game like Batman Arkham Origins, where everything was surrounded by Christmas. Granted, I'm a big Christmas fan, so I don't mind, but if you're not a Christmas fan, I could see why you might hate Arkham Origins, for example. But I think they did that really well with Miles Morales and not adding too much Christmas-esque things and Halloween things with Spider-Man. But with diving into the characters with the Spider-Man game, I really do think that this game does every character justice. From Mary Jane to Otto, each character was perfectly made for the Spider-Man universe. And if anything, they feel like some of the best adaptations of these iconic characters ever. If anything, I do wish we had more time with Aunt May. I didn't really feel insanely attached to her for some reason. It was still a great connection, but it just didn't hit me like some of the movies did. I don't know if that's just me, but let me know in the comments if you guys feel like that too. And then the star of the show was Doc Ock. His character progression in this game was incredible. I feel like this is one of the best villains I've seen in games recently, and he had an incredible performance. And I almost forgot to mention, but Peter Parker was great in this game. I heard people don't really like the PS5 version of his character design. I kind of like it more than the other one personally. That's just me. I didn't play as the other PS4 version of him, so I can't really say too much about it. But I don't have anything bad to say about the PS5 one. And also, I love the introduction of Miles throughout the game. From the events with his father to the end credits, it just put a huge smile on my face, and I thought they did him very well in this game. I didn't know he was going to be in it at all, so that surprise was really cool for me to see. But one character I do want to talk about is Martin Lee. Part of me wishes he had a bigger role in the story. He went from the main suspected villain to just a plain old gang leader at the end. And although I'm not complaining that Otto ended up being the main villain when we got to the end of the story, but I feel like Martin was kind of done dirty, and I feel like he should have been on the same level as Otto at the end. I understand why he wasn't, but I just feel like Martin Lee should have gotten a little bit more credit. Now with Miles Morales, this is where my bias comes into play. Or I don't even know if you'd call it bias, but I just really enjoy the characters in this game. With recently being introduced to Miles through the animated movies and the game, I love everything about the characters, like I said. I think the characters are the stars of the game, and they make the game what it is. From losing his father in the first game to his relationship with his mom, Finn, Uncle Aaron, and everyone else. Miles Morales is built on this community feeling, and you can clearly see that when they talk about Harlem, and the whole game is based around that area of New York City. And I just really enjoyed all the other cultures that were put into the game. I know it doesn't really have to do with characters, but it was very refreshing to see all these different types of things happening within New York City and just kind of being introduced to it within a video game. And that's just something you don't get with Peter Parker, and I think that's why Miles Morales is a good kind of second side of the Spider-Man universe. It's a cool little twist on everything that's going on. Makes things feel a little bit more special and different. But I'm gonna be honest, I even love the villains in this game. I really don't know why, but I enjoy Finn and Simon Krieger being the main villains. I could see Simon Krieger being a meme from the community. I don't really know the overall opinions of the villains in this game, but I thought Finn was incredible, man. I don't know, it's weird because they're not the typical Venoms, Doc Ocks, Sandmans, Green Goblins, but they just work for this game, man. And even Rhino had a better role in this game than he did in Spider-Man. But I know it's a little debatable, but his boss fights were a little better in Miles Morales for sure, in my opinion. But like I said, I think Finn was a great villain in this game, and I think she did everything justice. Is she on the same level as Doc Ock? Maybe not character progression wise, but I think the overall emotional connection was still there and at its peak. I think emotional connection wise, they're at the same point. With moving on to the story, first we'll talk about Spider-Man, and this game is just a classic tale of Peter Parker. You feel like Peter Parker when you play this game, and his perfectly corny and comedic dialogue makes the game even better. From heartfelt scenes with Aunt May and Mary Jane, to the anger with Doc Ock, the story used emotion and the essence of Spider-Man perfectly, and I have no complaints with this story and that side of it. But now this is where the games kind of take two different turns, in my opinion. In Spider-Man, there are definitely some pacing issues. Nothing major, but there is something there. There's many times where in between major main missions, there is some small little task that you have to do, and it kind of feels like a little to-do list that you have to check off, almost like chores. Whether it's trying to gather information on trying to find Martin Lee or something, it just kind of feels a little off, and it kind of slows everything down from being at a fast pace at times. And not everything has to be action-filled. I think Miles Morales showed that off perfectly, but there was just something off, man. I don't know what it is. You guys let me know in the comments if you agree with that too. And I don't know if it's because of how I played the game, but I felt like the boss fights weren't really good with pacing either. We had Fisk and Shocker in the beginning, and I feel like we didn't really see a boss fight for a while. I don't know if that's because I did a lot of side missions in between Shocker, and I forget who was after Shocker, man. I think was it Martin Lee at some point? I'm not really even too sure, but the ending with Doc Ock and Mr. Negative, the pacing was really good. But one boss fight I do want to touch on that I didn't really enjoy, and it might even be a hot take from the community, but I didn't really enjoy the Scorpion boss fight. I know we're in the story section of the video, but I had to touch on it. It kind of felt very similar to the Scarecrow boss fight from Arkham Asylum. I don't know, man. It wasn't too fun to me. It was a good idea, but it also just felt too similar to other things. Kind of like Scarecrow mixed with Ra's al Ghul from Arkham City and Asylum. But either way, the pacing isn't too bad. There are for sure some moments when Peter ends up doing chores around the city and it gets very repetitive, but not too bad. With Miles Morales, not knowing too much about Miles at the time of playing this game for the first time, this was an incredible introduction to him. Over the course of the game, he became one of my favorite superheroes ever. However, how did he even get his powers in the first place? I may have missed something, but they just kind of appeared. I know from the movies it's a special kind of spider bite, so maybe that happened again with the other one, but who really knows for sure. It was definitely a little misstep in the story, and I think they really should touch on it at some point if it makes sense. But with the emotional connection in the story, you can definitely see it between Miles and Finn, and then even Miles and Uncle Aaron. It really hit the heart, man, especially that ending scene. It was legit one of the best end scenes I've seen in gaming so far. Combine that with that incredible boss fight I mentioned earlier, it was just a great ending to the game. And with the ending for Spider-Man, I thought that ending was really good too. I think the endings in both games were incredible. For Spider-Man with Doc Ock and Spider-Man Peter Parker just talking at the end, I thought it was really good. That little connection and not understanding each other's point of view, I thought it was really cool to see, and it just showed how Peter just lost a friend. He was trying his best to bring him back to sanity, and he just couldn't get him back. With pacing though in Miles Morales, I do have to say that I enjoy shorter games, so I may have a bias in this department. I feel like Miles Morales wasted no time getting to the main missions. Even with the side missions and filler stuff, it wasn't long and it didn't drag on too much. Although I do see why people call it a glorified DLC, but I think it hit the nail on the head with being a new game and not putting too much fluff into it. It could be a little bit of bias, but that's just me. Now moving on to the side missions and collectibles. I'm just gonna say this and be honest at first, both games are annoying with both of these things. Although I do enjoy how the collectibles do pertain to each character in both games. Like in the Spider-Man game with Peter Parker, he has the thing where he takes pictures of certain landmarks in New York City and all his backpack stuff. And then Miles has his time capsules and recordings for making beats, which is really cool. But back to Spider-Man, the side missions and collectibles in this game are just straight chores. And there are way too many tokens for each side mission you do, man. I think there's like 7 different kinds of tokens you can get to spend on your suits and upgrading things. I think there's just too much. And the crime missions are a pain too, man. They're very random with where they appear, and it makes this taxing process even worse. How I just have to hope that a crime in progress happens randomly where I need it to happen. But overall, I am happy with the suits and upgrades in this game. They are extremely good, and the customization is incredible. If these things weren't that good, I wouldn't be doing any of the side missions or the collectible things in this game. But back to the suits, the game is a clear winner with the suits. They are incredible, and I love almost all of them. Even the gadget upgrades are very fun, and it makes the gadgets even more enjoyable. With Miles Morales, the game is pretty similar with its collectible experience, but there are less of them, which is better. And the phone app that they introduced was a great idea for selecting what side missions / token rewards you wanted to use. It just made this whole experience a little easier to do, and I really enjoyed it. Of course, you had to go on the map for certain things like the recordings with Uncle Aaron or the time capsules, but I thought it made the crimes in progress a lot more easier and honestly a little more fun to do. I really hope they do that with Spider-Man 2. But I will say the suits in Miles Morales are definitely lackluster when compared to the other game. Granted, they're not bad by any means, but there's just not too many of them, and a lot of them are kind of tame when compared to the other game. Like Spider-Man had a freaking suit with a skull, man. Like that was a crazy suit. And like I said before in the video, Miles Morales doesn't have too many gadgets, so the upgrades aren't as good either. But like I said, they're not too bad. It's just the only bad thing, and it's in both of these games, is the amount of collectibles and how repetitive each of them are. And the side missions aren't too great either. But now with moving on to the review and ranking of the two games. One thing that you can't deny about these games is that they are some of the best superhero games in the market. The immersive experience in these games is incredible, and you really feel like Spider-Man in both of them. These games will be the closest thing to what the Arkham games did, and the two franchises will be at the top for a very, very long time. But where do I rank these two games today? Personally, and I hope some of you agree with this, so do not get too mad at me, but for me today, I'm going to rank both of these games at an A tier spot. I think both of these games do things extremely well, and there are definitely some lackluster aspects in them, but they both kind of balance each other out in a way. And I really think these games, like, they're connected to each other, man. Even when you rank them, I don't think you can separate them. Personally, I would have Miles Morales taking the edge a little bit, just because I enjoy Miles Morales more than Peter Parker a little bit. With me being introduced to Miles somewhat recently, it's kind of refreshing to see a different take on the Spider-Man story for me personally. But yeah, these two games are A-tier games, and I am extremely excited for Spider-Man 2, and I hope it even gets to an S-tier spot for me one day.